A very warm welcome back to you. Thank you for joining us for our next session, part 3 of our panels. And that is focusing on the Internet of Things, digital twins when it comes to cities. So welcome. You do have the opportunity to please ask as many questions as you would like on the right-hand side here. I will also be asking you to participate in a couple of polls throughout the session. So please do submit your answers when asked. So today with me I have Hugh Eaton. He's Vice President Worldwide Government at Microsoft. Welcome, Hugh. Thomas Madreiter,
Hello.
Director of Planning in the city of Vienna. Very excited to have you with us. And Aymeric Sarrazin, CEO of Siemens Advanta. So thank you very much for joining me. Now, to get us warmed up and ready to go, we're going to have a little bit of fun to start. I'm going to ask each of you a couple of questions, so please keep your answers short. And it's really just to sort of pick your brains on a couple of things to ignite some discussion for our panel. So Hugh, let's start with you, please. Hugh, talking about future cities, what record-breaking innovation still needs to be invented, in your opinion?
Wow, well, that is good morning, good afternoon, everybody. That is a great question.
What are we missing, Hugh?
Well, I think, you know, and we're going to discuss some of this this morning. What we need to do a better job of is actually orchestrating and bringing all of this data together. There's no doubt that we've made massive advances in terms of the sort of data we're seeking to collect. We can understand the value of that integration, but we're not yet across the base very consistent about really leveraging the data. So I think that would be one step forward, which we look forward to. Very
good. And what was the last app that you downloaded, Hugh?
Well, I lent my 10-year-old daughter my phone, so it was something to do with it was something to do with chasing coloured balls around. The last app that I downloaded was to do with my Sony earplugs. So not very smart city, but very helpful for a person on the move.
Very good. And if you were to go 2 days without your smartphone, is that a good thing for you or a terrible thing?
I would deeply love to do that. Unfortunately, in my role, it's probably never going to be permissible. But I would love that. So if we can find an app that can somehow do all that work whilst it gives us a couple of days off, that would be the next app I would download.
But for now, no desert islands for you, Hugh.
Not just yet.
Aymeric, let's move to you. In which areas do you see the biggest change in future cities?
I think the biggest change for me is going to be how do we connect all the different systems already, you know? Right now there's transportation, there's energy, there's people mobility, but all this is kind of connecting completely. So that I think there's going to be the more change coming is everything is going to be interlinked.
And like you, was your latest tech product, the latest purchase, Sony headphones, or did you do something different?
No, actually, no Sony headphone. The last tech product actually was just a TV. I hadn't had a TV for 15 years, so actually I invested in the TV. But the app was funny because it was actually to checking in Munich restaurant that reopened completely. And so you need a tracking app, which I downloaded 2 days ago.
Very good, thank you. And 1 year living in a rural area, is that your idea of a good time or not?
Yes, it is actually. Actually, it was my way of talking about that last weekend, about is it possible to take 6 months with the kids and go somewhere? So yes, it is. And the question, and I follow Hugh on that, it's there will be have to a lot of change in our professional system in order to enable that. But to be honest, I think it's going to come at one point, actually.
Well, with the new working from home policies, maybe it's possible without taking 6 months off. Thomas, thinking of cities, where do we find huge potential in terms of sustainability?
I think the massive argument is that cities are efficient systems, and cities are compact, and cities help us to protect land, to protect soil. So I think for us, the big challenge is that we help to keep cities as cities, yes.
And Thomas, where is your #1 spot to meet for lunch to discuss the future of cities? Do you have a favorite lunch spot?
I would say, Yes, always. I would say if I can find it a restaurant on a waterfront, I'm loving it. Cities and water.
Very good, thank you. And 2 weeks without the internet, can you manage? Will you survive?
I'm not sure if I can because I'm starting with in the morning and I'm ending late in the evening. I would say I'm a bit of an internet junkie.
Very good, aren't we all? Lovely. Well, thank you for that bit of fun. But we're going to use some of those good answers to feed them into the panel, the discussion. Hugh, hearing from you so far, what I heard was leveraging data, which is great because we always follow and track, even when it comes to health on an individual level. But how can we really leverage data when it comes to cities and when we think of the potential for cities and the Internet of Things, which I know is a bit of a buzzword term? But how can we really leverage that data? What are the examples?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Amanda. I mean, I think the Internet of Things, I mean, we used to, prior to being at Microsoft, I used to be at Cisco, and several years ago, we used to call it the Internet of Everything. And it is a bit of a buzzword, but the strange thing about it is when you interrogate some of the things that people talk about connecting, that it sounds a little unnecessary. It sounds as if we can sort of get by without that. And of course, we've come to this point in human civilization without having everything connected. But when you think about, particularly in a city example, about some of the things that you can connect and the benefit of doing so, then it starts to sort of stack up, and things like managing traffic flows, a clear advantage to everybody in a busy city, managing parking through sensors, managing some of the less glamorous things like sort of getting rid of rubbish and waste disposal and doing that in an efficient way. It will improve the way that we can do recycling. And then there are some of the things like the sort of the weather monitoring that would allow the city to determine how it prepares its streets. You can do flood warning. You can do the obvious things like security cameras. You can have digital signage. You can there are lots of these things, Amanda, that we've lived without. But actually, when you look at each of them, it just improves the citizen experience, just improves whether you're in a town or
it's the
or a
small
village.
things, Hugh. Agreed. It's the small things. Even not having change for the parking meter and being able to do it via an app is just life-changing.
Well, also just again that sort of flow so that the city is moving. I mean, it can affect collectively, it can affect productivity. So all these things. I mean, those are just some examples, Amanda. But when you think about joining those together, and to Aymeric's point, then actually bringing the different systems together. So you've got a system of systems view, then you can really start to drive benefit.
Thank you, Hugh. And Aymeric, as you rightly said, connectivity is very important when it comes to cities and improving lives in cities. Tell us a little bit more about building a smart city strategy from data that's derived from a digital twin. I think that's an up and running partnership that you have existing at the moment in Vienna.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a very interesting question because the strategy that is needed for city, and by the way, for bigger system in general, actually changed the way we see strategy. Yes, it's a strategy in the vision at 5 years, but it's actually a very pivotable strategy. It's a very agile way of thinking. It's transforming a city to a smart city. It's really a journey through digitalization. Yeah. So you need to understand what from the citizens is needed, and then you need to go really step by step, and you need to actually reevaluate your strategy every 2-3 months and see how you go through. I have that question a lot, say, where do I start? I mean, I have all these things. I mean, do I connect everything? What do I do? I think the very important stuff in terms of strategy is to have a vision where we want to go, and then to start building on a system that just can be extended. And in Vienna, and this is what we did, where we looked at the e-charging optimization based on a graph platform that actually can be extended to other pieces in other systems. And this is the importance.
Thank you, Aymeric. Thomas, are you still with us there? I don't know if maybe you dropped out.
Yes, absolutely.
Lovely,
There
Thomas,
are some issues with the camera, but I'm with you.
Super. You mentioned efficiency and also protection of cities when designing smart cities. Tell us about Vienna and your vision. How do you combine, the future and modernity with respecting the history of a city?
I would say the USB of Vienna Smart Cities strategy is that for us, a smart city or IT solutions in the smart city are not a self-purpose which ends in itself. So we have a very strong focus on the social need of the people. Our smart city concept sees people as social beings and the city as a social system. So we are also trying actively to design the transformation to a digital society, but I would say including consideration for the weakest. This is the social focus. Maybe this is one of the strong points in Vienna.
Thank you, Thomas.
Could I just jump in here just a minute, because what Thomas said, I think it's extremely important. We always talk about smart city and technology and what is the new technology in this, which is the base and absolutely the enablers. The goal is exactly what Thomas says. It's very nice to hear that it's all about how citizens get happier, how citizens live a better life in the city. And I think this is very important to bring that into focus.
Thank you, Aymeric. So maybe you have a solution. How do we make the citizens of a city happier through technology?
I would say it's extremely necessary to talk with the people, not to create solutions for the people. The better way is to create solutions with the people. And like I would say in each business, you have to know what's the customer's pain. And so I think at the beginning of smart city solutions, we often thought first on technical solutions. We thought first on our problems, on our processes. But I think we have to change the perspective. For us, it's extremely relevant what's the outcome of our processes. At the end of the day, is the result a better city for the people or not? This is the extreme, the focus point of our activities in smart city.
Just before we go to a poll, I have one question. In terms of the role of digital twins for building cities of the future, maybe you can just talk a little bit more in terms of painting the picture for us as the audience, what we mean by the role of a digital twin when we're talking about different areas of urbanization. Hugh, maybe that's a question for you.
Yeah, I can. Well, I'll start, and then maybe Aymeric can jump in on a sort of real life example. I mean, it's obviously digital twin. It's a virtual model that is designed to accurately reflect a physical being, and you put sensors in the critical information flows and decision receipt points. You then, through processing, replicate that digitally. And what that then allows you to be able to do is and you can do this in terms of town planning, in terms of how to design a building, in terms of how to design a sort of road system, anything like that. You can then run a whole bunch of simulations and scenarios through the digital twin without actually affecting the real version, the actual physical object you are replicating. And then just sort of test the system in terms of different things: contingency plans, resiliency, security, as well as sort of design and flow, traffic flow, that sort of thing. So it is. I think it's it's incredibly useful for all sorts of things. It's particularly useful in a city environment when you are bringing together essentially a system of systems. So it is the interrelationship of those various components that you want to sort of understand, but you don't want to be running simulations and sort of testing the system actually in your city. You want a digital version to do that on. But Aymeric, I know your teams have been developing this to quite an advanced degree. Perhaps you could build on that.
Sure. Yes. No, thank you. I mean, absolutely. So the digital twin is trying to put what is in the real world, put it in the digital world, so we can really understand what's going on. I can give very quick 3 examples, because it could be to design. So I drive an electric car for the last 3 years now, and everything was fine. I can charge anytime I want in the city. Munich is pretty advanced for that. Yesterday, I couldn't find a charger in my neighborhood. Why? Because there's so much demand and more electrical vehicle coming. There was no more place for me to plug in. Yeah. And so this is, for example, with digital twin, you look at what is the demand in electrical vehicle and where you can plan the charging depending of where they are. And this is more for the planning thing. We can use digital twin also for the city executive to make decisions. So for example, if you look at pollution, you can track the pollution and use, through that connectivity, you can use AI to predict why the peaks of pollution, and then to give the opportunity to the decision maker to make a decision before that peak has been reached. And this is, you can change traffic, you can change production, you can change different things in order for that peak not to be achieved. And maybe the third example also, and those projects that are actually running, yeah, so these are real life examples. The third one is to provide the citizen some strong value. So for example, you can actually provide the citizen an app, so it's very simple, but behind the technology is pretty advanced, where you can compare, should you go to work with your car or with your bike? It depends on weather, it depends on parking availability, it depends on the route, it depends on an accident on the road, it depends on a lot of things, and you can make a decision in the morning saying, yes, absolutely, definitely better for me to take the bike.
Thank you, Aymeric. I'm just going to refer to the poll that is now live, so our audience can also have their input. So when we're talking about this digital virtual copy or twin, which urban areas are most relevant or important for you? Would that be buildings, grids, integration of renewables, or e-mobility, e-charging? So I'll give you a few moments to enter your answers, and the results will come up shortly. Meanwhile, we go on with our discussion. Aymeric, as you rightly pointed out, it's the design that enables us actually to make smart decisions on a daily basis as a resident in a city. What was very interesting is the tracking of the pollution. Maybe, Thomas, you could maybe build on that, because it is part of the complexity of building a digital twin, how you can integrate sustainability, pollution into that.
Absolutely. For us, a digital, what's the specific idea of a digital twin in my point of view? It's the aspect that it's not static; it's a dynamic system. And so I would see 2 main goals of digital twins. First, for the city administration, for example, to simulate effects or to simulate impacts of different decisions. For example, what are the effects of some different alternatives of norm framework of the microclimate? Yes. And the second goal for us, a higher level of convenience for the citizen in the city, because they also can simulate different decisions. Should I go by car? Should I go by bike? When should I go jogging next day because of the temperature? I don't know. And so I think it's extremely relevant to focus on these 2 target groups, on the city administration, but also on the civil society, on the people in the city, but also on the whole business sector in the city, because I think a digital twin will become an extreme relevant infrastructure in a city.
And Amanda, might I build on that from
Please
Thomas?
do.
Because I'd like to link back to something you mentioned earlier, Amanda, which is when we talk about smart cities, there is a tendency to sort of concentrate on the reality of urbanization and all that means. We're also trying to ensure, though, that we extend that to connected communities, which is, which is talking about making sure that we're not building a sort of unequal society where all the benefits derive from living in a city, and actually the rural community become increasingly disenfranchised. I mean, broadband and sort of connectivity, the ability to, you talked about working from home earlier, Amanda, which many of us are doing. But for some people in a rural community, going to a city is not an option, and they still need to, have a job and be productive and feel useful, feel a part of society. So whenever, we talk about smart cities, I think we need to also bring in that sort of connected community piece, so that we're not. I mean, we know how the world is moving in terms of urbanization, in terms of globalization, and several of us probably thought that digitization, was going too fast. Well, actually, it clearly isn't going fast enough. But I think as we talk about it, it's important that we try and bring everybody with us, so that there is an absolute focus here, quite rightly, on smart cities, but also, the rural community and small villages and small towns get some attention and some support from governments and government planners as well.
Sounds like you've answered the question to our panel. Is it all about technology that's driving the future? And it's partly yes, but not all of it, huh? We have had a question from the audience from India, a gentleman living in a small city in India where there's a huge problem with congestion, traffic, population. Where do you suggest that city starts in terms of, better planning when it comes to that congestion? Who can answer that? Hugh, have you got a solution?
I'll give it a start. I mean, I think, it's important to, and several of the panelists have talked quite rightly about, this is about people. It's not about technology. It's about how technology enables a society. So I think a couple of things stand out in terms of when we're talking to government organizations about where they should start. The first thing, Amanda, is where do you want to finish? What is it that you want to achieve by making some technology investments and connecting the various systems within your town or city? You need to know where you're trying to get to, and there's a couple of pieces around that. Where is your national policy or any local government policy? Where is that going to stretch you? Where's it going to empower you? Where's it going to constrain you? And then, just simply speaking, what is the art of the possible? I mean, because making smart city investments is not going to instantly solve traffic congestion. There needs to be a whole. I mean, first of all, the town itself needs to be committed to that. And some people may not be, because they need vehicles to get around and go to work. So I think you start with, where are we trying to go, and therefore which systems are we trying to connect? What is our freedom of maneuver in terms of what we can enable or constrain, increase or decrease, and what is actually going to be better as a consequence of making these investments, and have we got the right priorities? So if we make some investments and we start to control traffic flow, is that the big thing? Because you don't want to be titillating around the edges if you're missing the key thing that is driving, sort of either productivity or just general contentment of your city dwellers. So that's a start anyway.
Thank you.
Let me
Please go ahead.
Go ahead, Amanda. No, I was just saying, I mean, to build on that also, I like that a lot. And the fact that you need to, build something with the city that comes, when you look at technically, I have a lot of this discussion of what software do I use? What app or platform do you tell me? I put it in and it's okay. That's not how you get the result that is sustainable and for the long term. You actually need to develop a very customized solutions with whatever problem it is, based, of course, on very strong use technology block that already exists for cost and of course for proof of we know it's working. Yeah, but then you have to develop with the city. You have to develop the specific customized user and user interaction that is needed for that problem. And then I think this is very important because this is really part of, there's traffic issue in a lot of cities. They're actually pretty unique to every city. So you can use the same technology backbone, but then you have to build that very customized piece that actually works specifically for that city and that problem.
And presumably creating a city experience for visitors as well. We've just had the results in from the poll. 42% say that buildings are the most relevant for them when it comes to digital twins, 25% in integrating the renewables, and 21% focus on the e-mobility, e-charging. Thomas, are they surprising results for you, coming from a more sustainable angle?
No, I don't think so. My key point is regarding to the point before. At the end of the day, you need a city system where it's.
Oh, seems like we've lost Thomas there. I'm sure he'll be back in just a moment. Can I bring up the point of the MindSphere city graph? Now, I believe this is a partnership between Siemens, Advanta, and Microsoft. And maybe you can just tell us a little bit about that, because I believe it has been tried and tested. And maybe you can tell us why this is a unique project.
Yes, we did it in Aspern-Seestadt with the MindSphere model. And this gives us a very, I would say it has been for us, or it is a very proper model to test the effects of different solutions in the building information system, or for example, in field of smart charging.
And what has this experience, this project, actually taught us in terms of how we can improve and change? Aymeric?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think what was very interesting is you have Microsoft on one side and Siemens on the other. On the Siemens side, there's really of the knowledge across Siemens, actually. We have a lot of the smart infrastructure and the building knowledge to understand what it is. We have MindSphere that is really coming and helping the platform. And we have Siemens Advanta that allow to have the consulting and the customized specific development for that problem. On the Microsoft, we have all the technology on digital twin for Microsoft and the technology of graph technology. When you put it together, it's very nice because you have a technological platform that allow you through a graph where you can link the different system, and then you have the underneath AI technology that is allow the prediction through the digital twin. So in Vienna specifically, it was a lot on e-charging and how the grid can handle that shift. Yeah. And then we use the same partnership between Microsoft and Siemens around this on different places of the system on a city and for a smart city.
And we had a question in from the audience. To what extent can we trust the outputs and predictions to come from MindSphere? Hugh?
Well, Aymeric, you respond first, and then I'll come in. I'll talk a little bit on security.
No, I respond first because this is a little bit independent on MindSphere. This is a lot of the discussion we have about digital twin in general, yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is why it's very important: is you still have the decision maker. You know, when you drive your car and your GPS tell you turn right, and there's a wall on the right, you're not going to turn right because you still have this interpretation of technology helping you to get faster where you want to go. And this is exactly the same thing. So when you look at MindSphere City Graph, there's all this data coming in. There's the smarts telling you, how it could look like. And then you have the interpretation from the human that actually can follow or not. It allows you to bring a lot of data that a human alone could not be able to analyze. So you will not be able actually to have that level of insight. Yeah. So what you do is actually you elevate the insight level. And so the decision maker can make decisions faster and decisions that they couldn't have made before.
And what learnings really came from this project? What did it throw up? Where are the biggest challenges that perhaps need addressing?
I mean, we can have Thomas if he's back on. If not, I'm happy to.
Yes, sorry, I had massive technical issues, so I stepped out, and now I stepped new in the conference, but I didn't hear the last 5 minutes, so sorry for that.
No problem, Thomas. Nice to have you back. We're just on the topic of MindSphere City Graph, and
Yes.
perhaps you can identify and tell us the learnings that has come from that so far, where the biggest challenges are that maybe need addressing.
I would say for us it had been very successfully. We rolled it out together with Siemens and our Aspen Smart City Research unit in Aspen Seestadt. And we did learn a lot to deal with the energy providers, but to link them with the interests or with the needs of the people in their flats, because I would say there always is a big difference between our theoretical models and what the people in their flats are real able or what they will to do. And so for us, this is a very good basis to scale it up for our next city enlargement projects. And so I would say it's a very good basis. And one of our next projects, for example, we do in Vienna is we are working on complete digital building regulation information for submission involvement. So I would, for us, it's a success story, I would say.
Very good. Now I have one question for the audience in terms of a poll. Now the question this time is, looking at smart campuses, which key themes are most important for you? Decarbonisation, digitalisation, safety and resilience, or convenience and user experience? So I invite the audience to please submit your answers. It could be more than one this time. So go ahead and I'll relay the results in just a few moments. Let's move along to connectivity and ecosystems. In our experience so far, where are the problems and where are the solutions to connecting systems? Because there's so many different systems on very many different levels, which can be incredibly challenging to connect. Hugh, maybe you have some input there.
Yeah, sure. I think, well, first of all, what you say is absolutely true. I mean, one of the benefits of MindSphere is that you can actually integrate, new data flows with legacy systems. But that, none of our cities are sort of greenfield sites. You can't just sort of shut the place down for a couple of days whilst we sort of rewire. So it is absolutely a real challenge. I think any of the technology solutions that anybody in the industry is promoting or presenting or offering has to have the capability of integrating those data flows. And to be honest, it is achievable. You've got to, there needs to be some sort of increased investment in the sort of innovation and those sort of things. It'd be good, I think, as we drive the R&D in this space, ultimately the price of the whole sort of thing starts to reduce, which means it's a little more accessible to to more cities. I mean, there's a lot of them, and particularly in the sort of emerging countries, the cost of some of these investments, I think, at the moment is prohibitive. So I can see a big benefit coming as the cost starts to come down. Then there's the sort of democratization of technology that I think most of the people on this call would like to see. And I think
actually, it was a question, Hugh, about the cost. The digital twin concept, is that really feasible in developing countries?
Well, I think it is because the benefits are considerable. I mean, really, if you don't have a digital twin, or if you're not following that sort of strategy, then you're probably down to either taking on board insights from elsewhere, which is fine if you've got an analogous comparison, or you are taking a bit of a punt and making a sort of assessment that what you're about to do is going to have a positive effect, or you're just kind of you're somehow poll the city or talk to the citizens, find out what they want to go at first, and that's what you go and do. But you don't want to be testing on your city. You don't want to be running simulations on the actual live physical entity. You want to be doing that on the digital twin, so that you can see the benefits or potential benefits, and then implement the policy. But I do see, I think as we go forward, I mean, more investment, more focus, more attention in this area is going to start to democratize the technology, and I think it will become more and more widely adopted.
And there must be vast potential for partnerships, both large and small. Siemens, Microsoft, fine, but also players, from all different walks of life surely can come into this ecosystem.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important that they do, and I'm sure Aymeric would say the same from a Siemens perspective. I mean, we and other technology companies are always seeking to partner with local partners. I mean, there are some obvious benefits to that. You enable some good skills transfer, some good knowledge transfer. You're supporting the local population, the local economy. And critically, you're getting really good local insight back from those local partners who, in many instances, will understand the dynamics of what you're collectively going at better than we might, at least certainly initially. So there's, it's a great point, Amanda. There's tremendous value in it, I think, for the local workforce and the local economy. But there's also tremendous value, for companies like Siemens and Microsoft in picking up that awesome local knowledge, so that we, as far as is possible, we are doing the right thing in terms of what people are seeking to achieve.
Thank you. Yes, please, Aymeric, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just to build on that, I believe really that the working in this ecosystem, it's a lot of noise, but it's actually extremely important, because it's also a very big change of culture, by the way, for us in the industry as well, because you go from a one-on-one partnership, I'm your partner, I'm giving you this, you're giving me this, we sign a contract and we're good to go, let's go do something, to a place where for an ecosystem to work, you need to give to the ecosystem more than you receive. And when you look from a business perspective, at first you're like, this is not how we used to work, yeah? So then suddenly you have to think about, okay, I give to the ecosystem something that another 10 player will get a lot of value of. So if you put all that value together, it's higher than what I gave. But this is how I will receive something that I did not receive before. And this is a massive change of culture as well in the way we do business and the way we interact with partners.
Yeah.
I just had in the results from that poll, and interestingly, or maybe not, safety is the #1 priority. 32% of respondents said safety is most important when looking at smart campuses or cities, maybe owing to our previous panel discussion on safety and resilience in cities, maybe also owing to the pandemic experience we've all shared. Following up that quite closely, 28% of respondents said that convenience and user experience was of foremost importance, followed by digitalization, 21%, and decarbonization came in last at 19%. Thomas, that seems a little sad to me that decarbonization is not as important as perhaps user experience. What would you comment to that?
I don't think so, because safety also, in my point of view, safety also includes that we have to tackle the problem of climate change and decarbonization. But otherwise, we won't able to keep cities safe. And so I think what the people do try to tell us that they, I would say, they need IT solutions which help them in their daily problems, and safety is one of their daily problems. But you have smaller points of focus and wider points of focus, and I would say climate change, decarbonization is one of the wider points.
It's perhaps not that easy to separate actually the answers there, because they all connect.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. And this idea of convenience and user experience, it's probably one that excites communities the most, because you can embed all the other good things within it. And you know, I refer again to Aymeric's idea about the tracking the pollution. I mean, that feeds into the idea of, you know, experiencing a city. Can you share with us some examples beyond some of the ones you already shared with us?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in very quickly, because this actually, it's a pretty weird topic, to be honest with you, because as a citizen myself, I want to have much more convenience. I want the experience to be better in my city, yeah? And there is a big question that comes on ROI, on return on investments. And then because then I'm here, and I always ask myself also, when I'm as a citizen in the city, do I want to pay for this? You know, is that for me good enough, that this is a value that really you know, I care, or that I want to pay, or is it something that I will change decision for my kids because of that? Yeah. So we have of course the pollution, as you said. We have also about, when you evolve in the city, I talked about, you know, you take your car, do you take your bicycle, you know? This is another one that just helps you make the decision. Some are convenient, so, you know, you can, you know, can I reserve a parking spot? If you know there's one anyway, then it doesn't have a value. If you're in a very congested cities where you have to go around for 15 minutes to find a parking lot, suddenly that value is huge, that you can reserve a parking spot before you even leave.
We have just a couple of minutes left, and I'd like to ask each of you very quickly, what is the most important thing to consider, in your opinion, when designing the future city of today? Aymeric, maybe you could take the first answer.
Is to consider that technology will really changes everything, and it will change everything only if you have a plan for the people in the city.
Thank you. Hugh?
I'm going to go, Amanda, for resilience. I think you know, what we're hearing from people is that, and in fact, not just on this, not just in this meeting, but you know, we live in a world where, I mentioned earlier, you know, globalization is increasing, urbanization is increasing. What hasn't kept up, and frankly, the experience in various countries through the pandemic has evidenced this, is sufficient resilience within the system for when things go wrong. Things are quite well tuned for when things are going right, but resilience when it goes wrong. That would be mine.
Thank you so much. And very quickly, Thomas, if you could give us your answer before wrapping up.
Yes, I would say we have to create diverse, vibrant, resilient and safe places to live for the people, not more, not less. And there a good ID infrastructure helps more, but it must be in the background. I would say that this is the relevant thing from the people focus.
Thank you very much for joining me for this session.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. Goodbye. And sorry for the technical issues.
It happens.
Thanks.
Bye.